So here we are on the biggest of all the videos. This involves UVA, and there's a lot of material to go through here on this one, and so I'll just go ahead and get started. We were living, as I mentioned before, with that precision IT debacle in Charlottesville, and by this time I was traveling to Roanoke every day to work at Norfolk Southern, while that lasted until the not the FTARDs, but the let's talk about sodomy and prostitution people came into play. So anyway, in April of 2012, my wife approached the School of Medicine because she saw something in epilepsy. Now, my wife has a postdoctoral, has a PhD in electrophysiology. We met in Japan, where she obtained her PhD there, and she came from the Philippines. I got to give some background a little before we get to the real point here, get through the story just a little. So I was working in a Japanese company, and I thought, you know, here's a PhD, has just been graduated, and she's sitting around, got nothing to do all day, and I thought, well, there's opportunity in the States. So we came back to Richmond, Virginia, and she got posted to MCV. So she's doing epilepsy at MCV under Doug Coulter, and at some point there, with a shared bench with the chemicals and you know, preparing slices and things for epilepsy research, there was a Chinese national working there named Yun-Fu, and he was not cleaning up, you know, the countertop in the area, work area, for after he made his preparations for his own experiment. And so my wife said, you know, you need to, I'm doing this work for you, you need to clean this up. Now, my wife is 4'10" and about 100 pounds, and she spends most of her time listening to Christian radios and broadcasting things these days, and posting Christian messages to folks, friends and family on Facebook and things. So at any rate, we've been married over 20 years. If she were a bad person, I would know by now, and I don't have any tolerance for bad people whatsoever. So it's a very loving woman. So this guy retaliated in the laboratory in the 1990s when she was working at MCV at her first postdoc, and he said he went around the laboratory and told people he might bring a gun to work. Now, I'm all for Second Amendment, but a Chinese national coming and pushing my wife around and threatening to bring a gun to work. So I went to Doug Coulter. Doug Coulter, hands back, yeah. Went to the dean, went to Eugene Trani in the president's office, went to the local magistrate of Richmond City Police, and they all just thumbed their nose. We don't care. So of course, naturally, when Virginia Tech went down, I sent all of them emails, and I said, what did I tell you? You've got to take this kind of crap seriously. So that's the kind of stuff, you know, just starting off on the wrong foot. When she worked at Walter Reed as a contractor, doing ballistic brain injury, there were threats made by Frank Tortella over there. Just unbelievable anger and baseless accusations. I mean, why would you work in a laboratory where somebody tells you that's strike one or strike two because you have people who are slacking on their jobs, and so they race to the boss to when you complain about them not doing their job, they race to the boss and turn it around. And so she left there. I told her, I said, you got to get away from that. I mean, just in tears because of just the stress in that place. And Frank Tortella tried to plagiarize her work, tried to bounce her off one of her papers. And we ended up having to go around with the referee of the peer-reviewed journal. So it's not been good. Aside from that, she was physically assaulted by a technician at NIH. But here's the real clincher. So let's go down to April 2012. She's offered a job over at UVA in the Department of Anesthesiology by this guy, Monaj Patel, who's a British national here in the United States doing research. He's over at UVA. So she was offered a job, starts May 1st, 2012. Now here's the catch. There's a guy named Dr. Bertram down at UVA who helped Monaj get a greater than $1 million grant from NIH to do sodium gated channel research. That's important, sodium, in a subsection of epilepsy. So this is the wife's contract right here. It's dated April 2nd with her name on it. Dear Dr. Gryder, blah blah. You'll be paid $41,000 of the UVA payroll, whatever. Page 2. Here's where it gets serious. Specifically, you will prepare and make alleged physiological recordings from nervous from neurons within brain slice preparations obtained from rats. Sorry about the nervous part. My eyesight is totally shot from doing IT work. Too many screens over the years. Let me read that again. Specifically, you will prepare and make electrophysiological recordings from neurons within brain slice preparations obtained from rats. That is directly in line with the NIH grant, the sodium channel based research. So it turns out, excuse me, when she got there, some residual experiment had been left over by a previous student on calcium channels. Patel tried to put calcium channels up in front of NIH and said, the thing's been beat to death, go away. So then the sodium channels, with the help of Bertram, and because Bertram's name is on the grant, then that's how the grant was obtained. And it's an R01 grant, so that's a non-trivial grant for those of you in the science field. You know what I'm talking about with NIH. An R01 is a big deal. So she gets there, and the first thing that Patel has her doing is calcium channels. She's not doing sodium channels, so she's not working on the grant, and yet she was asked she's registered with the NIH grant. So her name is on the grant. You register yourself because you're the trainee, or in this case, the trainee is the postdoc fellow. So she's the research scientist. So she's on calcium channels for several months, from May, June, July, somewhere along there. And then for 2 months, then Patel puts her over with Bertram to do some other separate epilepsy research. And near as I can tell, and it's just my opinion, but it looks like payback, a favor. So he's using her for that. Then it's back bounced for a little while, I think just a short time with some calcium, but then shortly after that came in a grant from Pfizer, because Patel had connections with Pfizer from previous work years before. But this, now notice here on the contract it said rat brain slices. You do not jump around. Like, for example, you don't have somebody who comes in doing brain research and then they go from say epilepsy over to dementia, epilepsy over to Alzheimer's, epilepsy over to let's say what do you call it, stroke. You don't jump around and just do different things wherever you feel like, or memory and plasticity. You just can't do that. If you're in a certain part of the brain, that becomes your specialty. And sure, you can learn other things, but you just don't switch. It's just like an electrical engineer doesn't switch from going to, say, working at Intel to working to a power company, from very high voltage to very low voltage to very high voltage. You don't just jump around. They are separate subjects. Or somebody who's working at, say, a nuclear power plant, or then is going to go become a nuclear scientist for, a nuclear tech or engineer for a submarine. A submariner. Set aside all the details now, but you just don't switch around like that. It doesn't work that way. So in the same vein, you don't switch from just doing years of epilepsy research. You agreed to do epilepsy research, and then he puts her on for a month over here on this Pfizer grant. Now the Pfizer grant, depending on which documentation I look at over here, is either $125,000 or $150,000. I don't know which it is. But the word was that UVA came in and capped off. Let me restart that. In the beginning, when they started doing it, they did a first run, October, November around 2012. And their UVA and Pfizer got in a tiff about patents, and UVA said, I'm taking patent rights with you on this. And Pfizer said, tell it to the Marines. We're not going to happen. This is our stuff. You're just doing a little frivolous piece on the corner here. No. I'm not giving you the whole sandwich where you're just getting a corner of it. No, sir. So they fought back and forth, and then that stopped, and then he switched her back and made her do a departmental presentation on calcium channels. After jumping around, no research, no data, no nothing. Just to do gotchas. That's the way he was, all the time yelling, all the time angry. Patel is this way. Even one time he said, I'm angry all the time. And my wife, being the sweet woman she is, she says, that's not good for your health. You shouldn't do that. You know, concerned about that, even with him being the tormentor. And we'll come to that in a minute. So December goes around, and then somehow in the background, UVA and Patel and Pfizer work something out so that it's just money trading hands. And so they start up in January on the Pfizer grant. And so the problem with the Pfizer grant, and it seems I must have left one document at home here. I don't know why it's not in this stack, but anyway, on the one of the ancillary documents, it shows that her name is not on it. There's only a technician and Patel's name on one of the side documents, and it says that it's going to be 1.2 months for the research. Well, to cut to the chase, in the overall time she was at UVA, in 13 months, 8 of those months were spent on the Pfizer grant. The Pfizer grant was spinal cord and pain research. You're jumping from the brain to the spinal cord here. Secondarily, it was on mice, not on rats. So you remember here what I just said. This is why this matters. The contract says explicitly, prepare electrophysiological recordings from neurons. That's not spinal, by the way. You call it what you want, but that's not what's going on here. Within brain slice, neurons in the brain, thank you very much. Preparations obtained from rats, not mice, not Pfizer, not pain research, epilepsy. That's what this grant's all about. So, Patel yelled a lot at my wife. He actually called her into the office on a Saturday in about February, and essentially threatened her job and called her a pair of hands and a super tech. And throughout time, it was very clear that Patel and his sidekick, an undergraduate student, Arajo Nijam, who is now down somewhere in the Tidewater area of Virginia at a medical school. His father's, to the best of my knowledge, a doctor down in Danville somewhere, Danville, Virginia. Those two would actually one day went out to a bar during lunch and watch a soccer game. Patel showed favoritism because he's Indian. They're both Indians and male. Something the EEOC is saying, oh, we can't find any evidence of it. So, yeah, right. So my wife, Davina, was hired to be the prime researcher on an electrophysiological stand to do epilepsy research on the grant. She never, in all the months she was there, she never worked on the NIH grant on sodium channels, not once. In 13 months of work there, she never worked there. That is contract fraud. That is grant fraud with NIH on the face right there from the outset. It's also grant fraud with Pfizer, because it turns out that her name is not. I wish I had brought this document. I just don't know where I must have left it at home. But anyway, her name is not on the document anywhere on the ancillary document or on the main contract itself. Now, the main contract is right here, and I'll read just a piece of it, which I have highlighted. It says, consulting agreement, Pfizer Inc. And between Pfizer Inc. and the rector and visitors of the University of Virginia with Monaj Patel. This is page 1 out of about a 15-page document right here. This is it. So he used her. And he took that money and pocketed it. He and UVA. The story was, like I say, that UVA took 48% right off the top. That's what I was told multiple times. That's my best information. If that's not correct, then I'll stand corrected when I see it. But the thing of it is, all we have to do is go through the books and find out where the money went. It's not some mystery of the universe. You can just do a FOIA subpoena, and it'll come out. It's a public university, state university. It's no big deal. You can't hide that stuff from anybody. And that's going to come to conflict of interest reporting in a bit on another point. So then, the yelling and the complaining and the shouting at my wife by this guy to my wife was so intense that in the month around the end of May and the beginning of June, see if you can see that. That's my hand. That's how much hair I pulled off the floor in 1 month. That's how much of my wife's hair fell out because of what's going on here. Of course, that's in color in the real picture. Coming home in tears at night, just destroyed. And the sad part is that UVA was supposed to provide laptops for doing the data processing, for whatever she was doing. They didn't provide anything. I had to drive to Richmond about January 2013. I drove all the way out to 301, just below Ashland. Went to a office, Max I think it is, and I bought a laptop and I set it up. And we stayed up sometimes as late as midnight, and sometimes she stayed up later than that till 3 a.m. doing the calculations for that spinal cord research because he wouldn't let her do it on UVA time. And so here he is running her out for all this. Now, so as I said before, her contract started in the beginning of May. Well, that means in April of 2013, coming in that spring, she was supposed to get a yearly review, so, you know, say, hey, what you doing? She didn't get one because Patel had not gotten his final payment, so he was just running out the experiment for himself. There was no work being done whatsoever on the sodium channels at all. None. None. Raja had already left from 2012. He was graduated. He was already in med school. So you have nobody in the laboratory doing the sodium channels at all. None. All that money being spent by the federal government. None. And it's supposed to be a yearly report. We're coming to that. So then he didn't do the review. Her hair's falling out and stuff like that. I said, okay, we're just going to wait a little bit longer. And then I started writing with her. We started working together on EEO. And so she put her EEO complaint together. And that was filed first in June. That was the first thing that was done. A federal EEO complaint. Not to UVA, directly to the office in Richmond. Because UVA, if any of you have dealt with UVA, you know why. And let me just say this, if you think I'm bluffing about that, ask yourself why Cheryl Mills and her attorney, who is David Gregory's wife, Cheryl Mills' attorney, they're both UVA graduates, and their connection with the email, and the judge had to order them not to destroy copies of email. Look it up on the news. You'll see what that's all about. You have to be careful. This is UVA, for crying out loud. So then, the hair's fallen out, the EEOC complaint is filed, and so the next thing that was sent was this letter right here. 2 pages explaining what's going on June 16, 2013. Bob McDonald, Ken Cuccinelli. Right here at the top. Ah yes, I misplaced my document. Now I can go back and show you something I didn't have before. This is the document I was talking about that shows the, this is the Pfizer document. So these are the 2 people. This says Patel and says Dominic Rose, technician. Dominic didn't do any research on or work on that as far as I know. It says right here in this column is 1.2 months of research by Patel and 2 months of technician work by Dominic Rose involving the mice. My wife's name is not on this page right here. She's not being put on this page. That's very critical. Now, so, got to back up just a little bit here. Around 2010, to best my records, there was a guy, see if I can pull out his name real quick. Yeah, Kevin Morrissey, over at what they call the Virginia Quarterly Review at UVA. The account given on the news was that he was harassed so much that he killed himself. And other people say, well, that didn't happen that way. Just read the news, decide for yourself. I have my own opinion, but just read the news yourself. So he killed himself on the last day of the president previous to the present one, being Teresa Sullivan. On the last day of the previous president of office, he killed himself. So Teresa Sullivan says, well, we need to do something here. Now, Teresa Sullivan's from Michigan. So she creates something called the Respect That program at UVA. This article right here comes from a newspaper that's called, oh golly, The Hook, and it's no longer in publication. This guy David McNair, I've met him. I've talked with him about this, so you know, I can verify the veracity of this document here. So she sets up this Respect That program. It's an anti-bullying program to stop people from to prevent another suicide or something else terrible happening. Really, it's a cover your butt program. Okay, anybody who's worked with an ethics board of any organization really knows what that whole bunch of stuff is. It's nothing but risk management. It's just trying to sweep things under the carpet. It's baloney. But I digress. So here, in this article dated March 1st, 2012, which would put it just about 2 months before my wife was hired, she creates this program according to the reporting here. This is Teresa Sullivan's face on this article right here, okay? And in here, she's quoted, and I'm reading what the article says here from David McNair. Quote from Teresa Sullivan, "We will not tolerate retaliation against an employee who reports an incident." Whoa! We will not tolerate retaliation against an employee who reports an incident. Who reports an incident. Well, okay, that's a good one. So, let's see what happens then. EEOC complaint's been filed, letter's been sent to McDonald. So my wife is going to go over here to the anti-bullying program. I suggest that to her. Long 23-page document explaining all the problems have been laid out. And so I said, I'm coming. I'm going to protect my wife. And they said, no, you're not an employee. You're not have anything to do with us. I said, yes, I am. So they bum rushed her in on a Monday to come in. They called her in. I can't come. She wanted to come in July. This was still June in 2013. She wanted to come in early July because Patel's going to be taking a vacation, and she didn't want him to know she's going over to file a complaint against him. Duh. So they bum rushed her in, and then they made her wait on the phone and said, wait, we've got to bring somebody else in. Some female was on the phone. I don't know who it was, but maybe a person named Heather, but I'm not sure. I really don't recall. There's a way to find it, but anyway. So she goes to the meeting, and they ask her all these questions, and they make her cry during the meeting. And there is this person. He puts his card on the table and he says, I'm senior HR specialist here at UVA in this particular matter. And here's what he said. He said to my wife, and this was, I wrote these down right after this happened. He said to my wife, in the signature Sullivan anti-bullying program created to stop problems, and remember again, I'm sorry, I got to read this one more time. We will not tolerate retaliation against an employee who reports an incident. Now my wife's in the meeting reporting the incident, and here's what Mark Bowman said. You tell your husband that I'm nice. And he, by the way, was livid. He bitterly complained that I wrote to the governor about this matter, came back around, said everybody's hot about that. He said, you're not in trouble. I don't want to put words in your mouth. May I pass all of this information along to your boss? What's the point of having an anti-bullying program with the person in question, and you're going to pass everything right back to the person that's causing the problem? Come on. And here's a nice little threat. And by the way, I thank you for this one, Mark, because you're right. What I'm getting ready to say, what you said here, you're right about this. Mark Bowman said to my wife in the meeting, your complaint is not going to just go away. Thanks. You're right about that. So then, this is the maneuver they pulled. But the real clincher at the end of the meeting, my wife being naive, she's in the School of Medicine, she doesn't want to be part of this stuff. Asians can't tolerate stress and harassment, being cornered. They're no good at that. We know that. We know that. That's not a mystery of the universe. So, at the end of the meeting, she says, thank you, Dr. Bowman. She didn't pay attention to the card. She was so stressed out. And Mark Bowman turned around and said, oh no, I'm worse. Excuse me. Oh no, I'm not a lawyer. I'm worse. Excuse me, let me start that again. I screwed it up 3 times. Oh no, I'm not a doctor. I'm worse. I'm a lawyer. So I thought, when my wife came home and told me that, I was beside myself. I was like, I wanted to be in that meeting to protect her from a 2 against 1, because I've already been through a couple of those myself. And here it is. Now they got a lawyer stacked against a person, and they're asking her to blab everything and turn it right back over to her boss. And they call this right here Sullivan's signature anti-retaliation program, and where they put in somebody who says now they're a lawyer, and they're retaliating and trying to harass my wife. After all she had been through, after this losing hair and being screwed over on the contracts. We're going to come to the contract stuff in a minute. I was so hot, and at this time I was working at the IMF, so I was commuting 6 hours a day. I was waking up at 3 a.m., driving up to Warrenton, Virginia, taking a van, pull into IMF, and getting on deck to do work at 6 a.m. My coworkers showed up at 9. And so as I was driving, the next morning as I'm going to work, I'm driving past Culpeper thinking about what Mark Bowman had said, and I was so angry that just stewing about it, that I was just passing the second exit of Culpeper, and I went like this, grabbing the steering wheel, and almost almost had to pull over because I started having chest pains down through here, and I thought I was going to have a heart attack. Cornered my wife and impersonating, cornered my wife with a lawyer after I wanted to be in there. But it gets worse. So shortly after that, I wrote to the Virginia bar and I said, hey, you can't pull this move, this is unethical. They said, hey, we don't know who you're talking about. Not a lawyer in Virginia. Okay. So I looked around, I called, I sent in a FOIA to UVA. Oh, it's personnel files. We can't tell you if he's a lawyer or not or where he is. My wife said, hey, just use the internet for crying out loud, because I'd already been thinking with UVA's connections to, places like New York, tons of New Yorkers down there, and folks out of state. I thought, this guy's got to come from some big state. It's not like West Virginia or North Carolina. He wouldn't come out of there. Not with this ferocity and this kind of intensity. The Southerners not bright enough for that. So I go out on the internet, and about 5 seconds later, there it is. He is from Michigan, just like Teresa Sullivan. Teresa Sullivan brought him out there to UVA to use him to attack people who made complaints against UVA in her own signature anti-bullying program. And so I contacted the Michigan bar, and he is barred in Michigan. He's not a lawyer in Virginia. And so he engaged in the unlawful practice of law in Virginia. He said, I'm not a doctor, I'm worse, I'm a lawyer. He did that to intimidate and inflict emotional distress on my wife. And he certainly got me. I mean, almost a heart attack, man. He is quite efficacious at his efforts. That's for sure. So, it's very funny to me how the liberals and stuff run around this country and will say, oh, we're looking out for the woman and we're looking out for the minorities. No, you're not. You're a bunch of two-faced freaking hypocrites over there. You just want to get in there and you want to put on a show and talk hot air. But when it comes to the real deal, you're not as crooked. You are worse than the rest of the group out there. You're worse than the people who are perpetrating the faults themselves in some cases. I just really take issue with you saying, it's like Hillary Clinton. Vote for me because I'm a woman. Wouldn't vote for Michelle Bachmann, or wouldn't vote for that cheerleader, Sarah Palin. You wouldn't vote for her. But vote for me, Hillary, because I'm a woman. Or make me college president of UVA because I'm a woman. That's all this is about. This so-called diversity crap. But yet when it comes to a legitimate complaint about harassment from a male, or actually several males, actually with Raja and Monaj Patel together, ganging up on my wife, yelling, contract fraud, grant fraud with Pfizer, grant fraud with NIH. And all you can say is that you put somebody who is a lawyer in another state to pretend to be a lawyer to make the problem worse. And then, topping it off, shortly before all this happened, here is Teresa Sullivan getting an award right here. It's on the page of UVA. This is not some obscure place that maybe they're taking it down now, but this is on UVA's own page. And it says here, March 12th, 2013. Well, the complaints, this thing here, the Respect Act complaint was filed in June, only 3 months later. She's getting an award right here, and it says that she's getting an award from the Women's Center in Washington, D.C. This was after they had thrown her out, and then the board came back, or actually the students and the faculty screamed so loud and they put her back. So this happened after the fact, and now they're giving her awards to, kind of assuage the bad feelings and everything. They're giving, let's see, what is this thing? It's a leadership award. Yes, it is. It says here, University of Virginia President Teresa Sullivan recently recently won a leadership award from the Women's Center in Washington, D.C. based nonprofit organization. You know what's really funny? I don't know how many of you recognize this guy in this picture, but he is, or was at the time, he's the president of CGI. CGI is the same company that built out Obamacare and then got fired from the contract. All one and the same. Small world right here. Let me put it up a little closer so you can enjoy this. Isn't that nice? Okay, so UVA says, we're going to do an investigation. Yeah, okay. So she didn't have to go to the laboratory for about a month, and then they come back. Assistant General Counsel of UVA, Lynn Fleming, here's a letter dated August 22nd, 2013. Blah, 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 blah. The School of Medicine therefore has concluded that not any of your concerns you raise can be substantiated. Well, the cover-up didn't start right there. The cover-up started June 16th, right here. Right after I filed this first letter, that's where the cover-up started, because that's where they triggered Mark Bowman, and they all started circling the wagons. So it started back here, not in August. And secondarily, I would say, too, I forgot to add in, that after the Respect Act meeting, and after Mark Bowman impersonating a lawyer, harassing my wife in the Signature Anti-Harassment Program, I wrote another letter. And this letter right here is dated June 30th, so it's before the August one, June 30th, 2013, to McDonald, Cuccinelli, and CC'd to Sullivan. There we go, 2 letters. So these guys, they all know what's going on. There's no mystery of the universe here. And you're going to be stunned by the number of people involved in this, because they all know what's going on. They all, in my opinion, engage in a cover-up. None of it can be substantiated. Oh, really? Okay. So then the next thing it says on page 2, you got to go back, tell my wife you got to go back to the laboratory and take it. And it says, also know that the Faculty and Employment Assistant Program is available to you for confidential support. And an alternative, you may consider resigning your position. Now the intimidation starts in here. And it says, should you do so, the School of Medicine, subject to a separate agreement with you, will consider paying your salary through October 31st of 2013. The bribe. Lynn Fleming tried to bribe my wife right here in this letter. This is the same one where it couldn't be substantiated, and then it said, we'll pay your salary so you'll get out of here and hit the road. Lynn Fleming, Associate General Counsel up there with Sullivan, bribing. So let's turn for just a second to process and lies. Of course, there's a ton of them in this whole operation here. FEAP and the other thing being hinted about is the ombudsman in this case right here, saying, okay, if you don't like it, take your parts over here. You got to go back to the laboratory, and if you've got a problem, go see. Let me just say this. I have no patience for psychoquackery. I have read the history. I'm writing my own book. I know things. It took me 2 years of research in the subject of testing. So I know all the way back to William Wundt and all the way out to the Holocaust, Planned Parenthood, the Army Alpha and Beta, IQ tests, sterilization. It's all interrelated. I know all about all that stuff. And Freud. Gosh, it's a mess. I have no stomach for a psychoquacker. I don't want to hear it. So this right here, FEAP, that's a bunch of psychologists running around pretending they know something. Folks, let's just cut straight to the point. And by the way, this is the ombudsman. So okay, here's the, let me just do this properly. This FEAP over at UVA. This is a website right here. Family counseling or some crap, whatever. Here's the ombudsman. This is the ombudsman page. It's on the website. There's no mystery of the universe. The ombudsman says you should not consider anything that you say the ombudsman has noticed the university or expect the ombudsman to take part in any formal process. U.Va. So what does that mean? Let's step back. EEO, letter to the governor, and then the Respect Act formal complaint against Patel and for all the stuff that went down, 23 pages. That is a legal complaint. These are legal complaints. You don't go over here and have legal complaints and then go backwards and talk to psychoquacks to the ombudsman. It doesn't work that way. Everybody knows this. And that's where some fraud comes in with the Virginia Employment Commission at a later point. And that's going to come out in a pending lawsuit that's not finished yet. So Fleming says, get your tail back to the laboratory. It's like, no. So my wife has this email. I'll read the most salient point. It says here, dated to Lynn Fleming, and the date is September 13th, 2013. I'm just going to cut to the point at the bottom. Again, I have not resigned. Here we go. I'll start at the top, actually. The University of Virginia is presently engaging in further harassment and intimidation in attempting to force me to resign from my post. There we go. You may not assume or speak at any time on my behalf. I have not resigned, I'm not resigning, and I'm not working with Monaj Patel until the matters I have raised, which I've raised, are dealt with. Again, I have not resigned, I'm not resigning, but I'm not working with the university as a postdoctoral fellow with the contract issues, the harassment, discrimination, and the issue with Bowman until the issue with Bowman have all been resolved. September 2013, Gryder, PhD. There it is, black and white. It's sent over there. It's no mystery of the universe. There it is. So, they fired her, and she went to the VC for unemployment, and to cut to the chase, she went through 3 hearings. Now, the second hearing was the most critical because it involved Katrina Lewis and Amanda Walsh. I can't prove this, but I will bet about everything I have that Lynn Fleming or some attorney was, or more than one, was sitting in the room, because I have the audio recording. I was the representative for my wife on this side, and then Katrina Lewis and Amanda Walsh were on the other side. Right from the very beginning, Amanda comes on the phone and says, "Hello, Katrina, how you doing?" Well, the letters we got didn't have Katrina's name on them. So how did Amanda Walsh know her first name was Katrina? Because they were having ex parte conversations and working out the details to screw us over. And by the way, you should be amused to find out that the VC set up a summer retreat for their business, you know, for the business of the Virginia Employment Commission. They could have picked any place in the state, but they chose to have their retreat at the Boar's Head Inn in August of 2013, just before this September 2013 letter came out. So, they fired her. And so in the second hearing, which I participated in by phone, Amanda Walsh started lying and saying that, well, she's not entitled to unemployment because she didn't exhaust all of her opportunities, namely going to the FEAP and going to the ombudsman. That's just a flat lie. Because in the same conversation, when I questioned her, I said, isn't it the case that if somebody's already filed an EEOC complaint, you don't go backwards to this thing and that they have no legal authority to handle these matters? And if, in fact, they had an EEOC complaint, it would be bounced from the ombudsman or the FEAP over to the EEOC? It started with the EEOC. It started with Respect Act. And Respect Act people will tell you the same thing. If it starts here, it doesn't go backwards. But yet she lied. In order to UVA, for her and Katrina Lewis to work together to fraudulently deny unemployment benefits for my wife. That's going to come back. You watch. And remember here what that letter said, that I have not quit, where I read that I have not quit, I am not quitting, my wife wrote. That's going to come back. So now, let's talk about the grants for just a minute. So Monaj Patel had a grant, and let's see here. Let's do this in order. Excuse me a second, got to get a chair. Okay. So she was there 2 years, so there's 2 years that are relevant to this discussion here. And let's go through these for just a second. First thing we'll notice, I know you can't read this, I'm just reading out loud. This right here is an official document, and I'm going to try to put this up close to the camera in that corner so you can see the NIH logo, the Department of Health and Human Services. Maybe hard to read, but anyway. Nonetheless, okay, National Institute of Neurological Disorders, NINDS. Monaj Patel, Craig Stewart, Director of Office of Grants and Contracts. Now that's one that hasn't been sued yet. He's going to be added to the lawsuit that I'll bring about later here, I'll talk about in a bit. So here on one of the pages, is about page 3, shows expenditures 2013, 14, 15, and 16. Each year, first year is $325,000. Next year is $336,000, $336,000, and $336,000. Highlighted here, those are the amounts. Okay, so add them all up together. What do you have? Over $1 million. Woo! Look at that. So now on another page, we have Monaj Patel listed, applicant organization UVA, signing official Stuart Craig. Then we have another administration official from UVA, Robert Merridge, M-E-R-H-I-G-E, Robert R. Merridge. That's another guy that's going to be involved. He's going to be included in the Fun Fest here eventually. So this is the first year reporting of the grant when my wife was working, and so what you see here is several things. One is that my wife is listed there as a postdoc fellow, but there's no report over here of any work produced. Yeah, that's right. Then you see this Arajanijam, an undergraduate student who hasn't even gotten an undergraduate degree, who is graduated, in other words, in May 2012, has been put on a federal grant. This guy, he doesn't have a master's, he doesn't have an undergraduate degree yet, and he's put on this grant. You can say what you want in the name of diversity. You can say anything you want about, well, so-and-so is qualified. I don't want to hear it. I have been, for 20 years, involved in this. I've been to conferences. I've been around PhDs for years now. I get the gist of what's going on. This is a farce, okay? I don't care what anybody says. Make a difference to me. You don't have the skills to really be doing serious work in epilepsy. On those, what do you call it, on those rigs? No. There is a serious learning curve on that thing. I have a degree in business, and I have 2 years of electrical engineering, so I've been through the basics of circuit theory and all that stuff. KVL, KCLs, loop equations, electrophysiology, loop equations. It's what is somebody in a biology degree or something like that? If they don't have that kind of training, they're not even in the game yet. So, and certainly, not even finished undergraduate. Nah, that's just silliness. So anyway, that's the first year grants. Now the second year grants, again, have the people in the front here, same people. Now here's the funny thing. So my wife was hired to do, like I said, research on this grant. Her name is on this. This is sodium channels right here. She didn't do any sodium channel research, and I want to point out right here, it says sodium channel NaV 1.6 isoform. I'm just reading one little piece right here. Sodium channels. And down here it says sodium channel gating, right at the bottom. This is the grant. This is the grant report right here for one of the years. It's public knowledge. It's not some mystery of the universe. So here's supposedly the report. Who did all this? When did this get done? Well, this wasn't reported to after she left. That I know, because I checked the grant. This stuff wasn't on there yet, so after she left. But who was doing this work? And here is the EEO discrimination. Araja was brought back the second summer in 2013 when the hair was falling out, because this is part of what it was about. He came back, and the claim was that from Patel that he had to finish up some work for something he was doing. And Roger said, no. So several questions come up. What was he doing back there? What is this, the Buddy-Roo thing, the Indian thing again? How was he being paid? Was he being paid? What was he doing there? What was the point? Why was he on the sodium channel research, and my wife was never on it even once the entire time she was there? That is, by the way, you idiots at the Richmond EEO, that is evidence of discrimination. Indian against Filipino, male against female. And age discrimination for choosing this kid here over someone who's over 40 doing their work and has years of experience in this thing and could do the research. Yeah. You at the EEO want to join in the fun with all the rest of the conspirators? I got your number, because I'll tell you all right now, I've already contacted the FBI, and I'm going to be contacting the EEO's IG about your behaviors. We're not done. I'll tell you that right now. Come back to that later, maybe. So, I failed to include a portion about this in that June period. After the report was made to the EEO, Patel took her off the rig. She couldn't do any research, so he canceled any further Pfizer research. After he had already started in May to have her do some preliminaries for yet another grant at Pfizer on spinal cord. He canceled it in retaliation when the EEO complaint was filed, and when the complaint was filed to Cuccinelli and Bob McDonnell. So he canceled that, and then he wouldn't let her do it was no more calcium channel stuff. He wouldn't let her do the sodium channel, but Araja was doing the sodium channel. And then James was beginning to do, James Honshell was beginning to do a little bit of it, ancillary, I suppose, at least if nothing else observing. So you have Patel and Raja in there together yet again, working on the sodium before, working on the sodium now. And as a postdoc fellow, you have to publish. So here's the grants you're supposed to be working on, she's supposed to be publishing. Well, she didn't get to publish on the sodium channels at all. Her name's not in here. She didn't publish any of this, no paper. And she didn't get to publish on the Pfizer grant because that's private. That belongs to them. They say you can publish. There's no publication, nothing. 13 months of work and no publications at all whatsoever. No research, no nothing. A total waste of time and money flying every which way. So now, the next thing is that you'll notice here on this back page, her name is on here and there's no publications. And interestingly, Raja's name is not on here, but James's name is on here. But yet, Raja and Patel did this right here, supposedly. Well, overall, folks, this is grant fraud. So she worked. She was forced to work on the Pfizer grant for 8 months. Pfizer wasn't told. NIH wasn't told. And the reason we know that NIH wasn't told is because I sent a FOIA over. And I'll just tell you right now, this is Catherine Gonzalez over at NIH. That's her email on a FOIA case. And I ask a lot of questions about what do you know about this Pfizer grant? And publications, money, everything. What do you know? I don't know, we don't know, there's no record, no information in the grants, no nothing. Doesn't know anything. They have no clue about what went down. Grant fraud, grant fraud. There it is. Oh, and look at this. You recall that there was this researcher or something over at George Mason, a guy from India who's saying, it was in the news, I think in the summertime or somewhere, he said he'd like to apply the RICO statutes against all those people who don't believe in global warming. Yeah, okay. So then, not Sass, but Ben Johnson, I think is his name. Johnson, one of the senators, said, oh, well, now let's see what you're doing with your money. You're over here running your mouth. Let's do a little conflict of interest on your butt and see what you got going. And as a result, there was, in an article on the internet, there was a citation to a paper. Well, that paper is 20 pages long. It's done by NIH. Here it is. This first page of it here. You can look it up yourself. Office of Inspector General, Department of Health and Human Services, NIH post-award grant administration and oversight could be improved. Ooh, could be improved. Right here, you got a $1.3 million grant, roughly. What, 325 times 4? Run the numbers. Oh, 330 roughly on average. 330 times 4, okay? And you got nothing. That's for you, taxpayer. But you got somebody who's pocketing the money. Well, where did money go? Well, that comes to Margaret Sachs and requirements for in conflict of interest. So then, on the conflict of interest documents, it says right here, University of Virginia, School of Medicine, Policy on Conflict of Interest, Conflict of Commitment, Director of Office of Research, and the Dean. The Dean is Stephen Dukovsky. Stephen Dukovsky, hey, I know that name. He's a signatory on the back page of this thing here with the Conflict of Interest document. Look at that. Signed February 18, 2012. Dean Dukovsky doesn't work at UVA. He's not the dean anymore. He went over to Pittsburgh. Oh, but he's not at Pittsburgh. He's down back at his alma mater. University of Florida. So, look at this. The original contract. Oh dear. Look at this. Whose name? Monaj Patel, George Rich, and Stephen Dukovsky, Vice President and Dean of the School of Medicine. U.Va. Isn't that sweet? I'll tell you why. Conflict of interest documents here means that you don't take your PhD candidates who are going to become PhDs, like James Hansel, for example, or a postdoc fellow trainee, and put them over on a side project and use them to make money. You say, oh, that's a load of crap. Somewhere between $125,000 and $150,000 went somewhere. And Raja got paid most likely during that summer of 2013, and probably the summer before that, but in particular this summer. The money had to come from somewhere. But here's the real clincher. Patel, yes, Monaj Patel, who's originally from Britain, brought 2 Italian friends to the laboratory in the spring of 2013. And they brought their own drugs, and they did their own little research in the corner. They did not do any work on the NIH grant. They did not do any work on the Pfizer grant. But, according to what I've been told, they were each given $9,000. Now I wonder where that came from. Conflict of interest. All kinds of rules and regulations, it says here. Conflict of interest related research activities will be referred to and reviewed by the UVA Conflicts of Interest Committee. For conflict of interest that involve federal research grants, research awards, the UVA Conflict of Interest will notify the Vice President of Research, oh, that guy over there, and Office of Grants and all these other people for potential conflicts that have been reported and need to be addressed. Can it be substantiated? Margaret Sachs sits over at the Commonwealth's office, Secretary of the Commonwealth in Richmond, and I sent a FOIA to her and told her to produce the documents that explain where all this money went. She said talk to UVA. UVA said talk to her. She refused to produce the documents twice. That's why she's a defendant in the lawsuit. She's covering up something about where all this money went. They know what happened. And furthermore, one of the things it says in this document, it gives an example of how to detect there's a conflict of interest. Now, see if I can quickly find this page, because it gives a sample of how this works. And there's a long list of authorities here when you're doing conflict of interest. I mean, there's at least two whole pages of authorities that they didn't contact at all. Now, it says here on Appendix 1 of the same document, page 12. This is on the internet. I found this on the internet. It's no mystery of the universe. It's the School of Medicine. Title of this thing is called Policy on Conflict of Interest and Conflict of Commitment, February 2012, UVA School of Medicine. So the following scenarios represent conflict of interest and areas of concern. Number 1, there's a whole bunch of them. There's about 7 or 8 of them at least. First one, now this was not an SBR kind of a thing with Pfizer. That's not what this is. So it's not an exact analogy, but it's close enough. So it says here, areas of concern. SBR awarded to a grant faculty-owned to a faculty-owned UVA startup company. Project includes subcontracted work and blah blah in the faculty's members' laboratory. Areas of concern: potential use of trainees on the project. Misuse would be the word. Loss of data integrity due to conflict of interest. Possible financial subsidy of the company. And lack of publication is another one with these kinds of things. It's listed in these examples. So there you go. Now, again, there was a third hearing with the Virginia Employment Commission where my wife was trying to get unemployment benefits, and so they said you can't have unemployment benefits because you quit, and because you quit without cause. This email that I read off earlier, she didn't quit. Okay, so that was already produced. So they're just lying. Okay, they're covering up on this whole thing. But here's the really funny thing: the final decision here, in writing. This is page 8. Okay, this is defamation. They're trying to destroy her. The employer, UVA. By the way, UVA didn't even show up to the hearing. It was just us. We made our presentation. UVA just wrote a letter and didn't even show up because of their arrogance. It was already in the fix. The back talk, the back channel talk. Didn't even show up to the hearing, the final hearing at the commission level at the VEC in Richmond. They write, after the fact, with their so-called decision. The employer in this case did not offer any witnesses to present first-hand testimony to rebut the claimant's allegations, my wife. In the absence of such evidence from the employer, the commission concludes that the claimant's supervisor did show favoritism based on national origin, Indian versus Filipino. That's called discrimination, EEOC. In the absence of any rebuttal from the employer, the commission also concludes that the claimant's supervisor engaged in grant fraud. Did you hear that? In the absence of any rebuttal from the employer, the commission also concludes that the claimant's supervisor engaged in grant fraud using money from NIH to pay for work done, pay for Pfizer. Clearly, these contentious are grounds for a reasonable dispute with the employer. No researcher may be expected to tolerate grant fraud. And yet, they say she quit, and she quit without cause. You heard the email, what I said earlier. Woo! Talk about some crooked crap. So, quick one here. March 10, 2014, I sent a letter to Helen Dragas. The silence is deafening. Next, filed a lawsuit. This concerns Mark Bowman. And so one of the complaints in this thing is that he engaged in false practice of law, and it caused me, like I said, almost caused me a heart attack. And I mean, wife, her hair is already falling out for all this going on here. So in their rebuttal to him saying that he was engaged in false practice of law, here's what they say. This is the state of Virginia. The Attorney General signed his name to this document, by the way. The Attorney General of Virginia, the sitting Attorney General right now, as of December 10th, says here, item number 12, Mark Bowman, he jokingly identified himself as a lawyer at the end of a human resources meeting to discuss Dr. Gryder's concerns with her job at UVA. Jokingly identified himself as a lawyer. I talked to the other professions, the CPA, architecture, oversight, professional engineering. I can't think of it. It's the 5 professions. I talked to all the other 4 professions. I said, somebody pull a move on like this, what do you say? They're out. All of them. No discussion. You're out. So here it is. So now, there is a Virginia bar complaint for failure to report this against these 5 people: Lynn Fleming, Aaron McNeil, Catherine Crookshill, Peter Messett, Rhodes Rittenauer, and a bar complaint for ethics for failure to report unauthorized practice of law by Mark Bowman, by Mark Herring. They all know. And I'm probably going to add another person. By the way, I filed an FBI complaint about all this as well because it's involving federal government. Last year, UVA refused to give my wife her W-2 forms. There's no negotiation on that. That was supposed to be done January 31st. I had to go to court. I go to court in Stafford County, September 22nd. The judge is trying to tell me that I have to give certain information, or my wife has to give certain information to UVA in order to get her W-2 forms. It's like, no, it doesn't. Here's the federal forms. I mean, the federal law. I looked it up. State follows the federal in Virginia. January 31st, no negotiation. Put them out. And Columbus Day 2013, wife and I went to UVA and gave our new address after she got fired to the president's office in Charlottesville, right there at Madison Hall. They knew where we were. There's no mystery. They knew where to send it. So, Aaron McNeil stood outside the door of, in the lobby of the courthouse after that hearing, September 22nd, 2014, stood outside and I said, why are you holding my wife's W-2 forms hostage? We got to file taxes and we're already late. She said, maybe we can make a deal. Make a deal? You work for the Virginia Attorney General's office and you're trying to bribe me? Well, and I said, you mean if I drop the damage portion of this, the $500 in damages, that you will give me the W-2 forms? Yes. So I contacted the same prosecutor that prosecuted Bob McDonnell, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and I told him what happened. And mysteriously, look at this envelope right here from UVA, and the date on it is October 9th, 2014. W-2 forms show up, and suddenly they switched their defense. They switched their defense to sovereign immunity. You can't touch me, I'm the king. How do you like them apples? After bribing me, and then now they're using sovereign immunity to protect themselves. That's a good one. But then, I think the catch is this one. I live in a county with same county as Bill Howe, Speaker of the House of Virginia, General Assembly. And I said, look, same thing I've showed you right here, the contracts and everything, it's in writing. The FOIA, the contract, the contract with what do you call it, Pfizer, all this stuff's right here. Laid it all out, explained it. He writes back and says, your claim of fraudulent practice is unsubstantiated. Signed, Bill Howe, right here. October 14, 2015. Bill Howe's UVA grad. So now Bill Howe has chosen to involve himself in all this. I added his name to the list just the other day. I sent this letter over to the FBI. I said, this is just a cover-up of stunning magnitude. So, I have a GoFundMe page set up. It's called GoFundMe/Fired Without Cause. That's GoFundMe//Fired Without Cause. I need help with I need help with money to get a lawyer to sort this out. I got a $4 million lawsuit, and in the lawsuit I already asked for legal fees. So it's pending. It's ready to start. It's time for discovery. It's time to proceed, and I need some help. And so that's the summary. And there we go. It's one of the great. I'm calling on. It's time for Teresa Sullivan to resign. It's time for you. And if you're watching this, Teresa, it's time for you to go. You just need to get out. You need to go back to Michigan. And for Mark Herring, same for you. You need to resign. You're going to cover up a crime like this. You can cover up all this stuff right here. You got your name on this, okay? You and Cuccinelli and Bob McDonnell and Terry McAuliffe, for that matter. I know you've already briefed him on this. There's no mystery of the universe, and he ought to leave too. You all need to. And Margaret Sachs, you've got to go. And Len Fleming and Bowman and any of these other officials that have been involved in this right here that claim to be contract officials, stuff like that, you got to go. So that's what I got to say.